I was so excited to be here talking with White Castle today and be your wellness section. And I was really pumped up because what I do in my day job when I'm not talking about the book and burnout and things with companies is we do purposeful transformation and talking about companies with purpose and understanding your 100-year history, what you're doing with the boards and how you're evolving in the community and seeing how much you care through looking through your values, presentations, and how you treat the people that work with you and work for the company every day. It's just an honor to be here. So thank you very much. I look forward to being back in Columbus in February to speak with the Conscious Capitalism CEO group there. And I'm volunteering with Ohio State's sustainability program as well. So I should say the Ohio State. I do know there's a difference. I have to be careful. So I want to talk to you about burnout and feeling off balance and give you some very practical tips that you can use for yourself as a leader and for the people on your teams as well that may be feeling the pressure on the front lines. And it's going to come in a very different delivery system. We're going to be using stories about animals, real animals, and the messages that they can give us about leadership. And as Nina referenced, each of you have a copy of my book, and there are many more stories about other animals in it and my crazy encounter in the jungle that I hope you will enjoy this year. So with that, I'm going to pull up the presentation and I won't be able to see you, but if you need me, please do stop me, say something so I can hear you. And we will have an activity in a bit where we will separate out into a different room for a bit. So Nina and Susan and I, we've all coordinated this in advance and hopefully it will work just fine. So with that, let's pop over to the presentation. So I don't want to read every bit of this slide to you, but I do want to talk about some important things that each of us are facing with burnout. 67 million Americans left their jobs in the last 12 months, and that's more than we've seen in the history of the United States. And the things that are causing this are the pace of change, not just the technology, but how it's affecting our brains. We can't keep up. You see, we are made of energy, each of us. We have the same growth curve, whether we are a plant, an animal, a human being, a organization, a company like White Castle has a growth curve. And so everything about our existence ties into waves and energy and how we're energized and how we can stay energized. And if you think about it, there's evidence throughout our language about that. When someone lights up a room, you know, they bring their energy to it. When you feel drained, when you feel burnout, when you feel transformed or enlightened, or when you have a great idea, what do they do in the cartoons? They put a light bulb over your head. Why is that? You know, it's because we're made of energy, and because when we have a high vibration, when we are feeling energized by something like a purpose, then we will perform, we will engage, we will communicate in a positive way. When we are feeling off balance, we are low energy and we are being drained of our energy. And in the last years with COVID, you know, scientists are saying that PTSD from that and from not knowing what the end is worse than things like a one-time event, maybe a hurricane or a tornado, because there's no end. We don't know when the end is coming. And what happens to us, it's just like if you put an ice cube in the bathtub or a hot cup of water, then it dissipates quickly. And that's what happens with your positive energy. It's just the law of thermodynamics. It goes into this feeling that's around us. And so think about your employees and your team members on the front lines and they're talking to customers who are upset and cranky and sick and dealing with a lot of things, and they're dealing with it in their own families that pulls from them. So you hear words like, I feel off balance, I feel drained. Well, that's because they literally are being drained. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Your energy staying positive is every bit as real as psychology or anything else you might talk about. It is real and valid, and you can feel it. So we're going to talk about how to recognize those pressures today, how to connect with your intuition and find the ways that you personally and your team members can stay more positive, and then how you can personally recharge. We'll identify some ways for that. So why is the cute little goldfish up here? One of my favorite talking points about how we have reached this point of complete saturation with incoming messages, incoming information, is that the goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds. The human American 18-year-old has an attention span of 8 seconds. So we literally have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. And if you think about the entire year 2000, the technological change throughout the whole year is now replicated every 30 seconds. I mean, it's really hard to get your mind wrapped around how fast technology is accelerated, and it affects us. We can't keep up, and we're getting tired. So those are some of the things that cause burnout. I'll talk to you a little bit about my story and how I reached burnout at a point. Now, I grew up as a child on a small farm in Kentucky, and it was a great place to grow up. My parents were school teachers, and I would spend the summers with my grandmother in an even smaller town. And what she taught me in those times at her house were things like cooking and sewing and adventures and being outside and planting gardens together. And one of the things she taught me that really helped set the perspective for the book that you have with you today is that every animal, no matter how scary it might seem or how creepy or smelly, whatever, that it had a powerful and important purpose. And just like we as humans, no matter what kind of package we might come in, there's an important purpose behind each of us. And so it was really important that she set that stage. And I was very, very close to her growing up. And when I was 17, she passed away. And I knew, based on the way we were raised, that she was going on somewhere else. She wasn't just disappearing. And later, as Nina said, I did innovation and sustainability and studied electrical engineering as well as human biofield studies. And so from an electrical standpoint, Albert Einstein said, energy doesn't disappear. And you guys talked about Andy earlier on, it doesn't disappear. It doesn't just go away, but it changes forms. And that's it. So I knew grandma was still there in some way, but all the busyness took over as I got older and I had children and I got married and I was trying to climb the career ladder, and there were so many things going on. And I used my story as an example for what not to do, what does lead to burnout, and hoping that it helps other people as they plan and cope and go through things. I had two wonderful sons, one of which had a very rare condition with his legs. And so he had a series of 5 surgeries and was indoors a lot, looking out at the other kids playing. And that was hard because as a perfectionist, as a driven person, I should just be able to fix that, and I couldn't. And then my other son, when he turned 16, got narcolepsy. And narcolepsy is an incurable autoimmune disorder. And in his case, it was severe enough where he couldn't finish high school. We had to finish that at home. And so these home challenges that we had, I so wanted to be able to fix them. And I had all of these shoulds coming at me from home. Well, if you pray hard enough, they will be healed. If you go to another doctor, maybe you can find the cure. And I was putting so many shoulds. I should be spending more time at home on myself. And at the same time, I was putting more shoulds on myself at work. I should be at work as much as the guys. I should be, traveling and meeting all the deadlines at work and not missing a beat. I should not show up as vulnerable. I should not share what's going on at home because they'll think I'm weak. And so I kept up this face. And, one of these pictures on the slide here is me speaking at the kickoff of the world's largest solar powered community. And that was one of the projects that I did near El Paso, Texas. And so on the surface, it seemed like, oh, Tab's got it together. I didn't want anyone to see what was going on behind the scenes. And I was very excited about what I was doing at work. At the same time, we're all going 120 miles an hour, right? We all have these things in our life at home. And I was running from it instead of recognizing it. And so the first most important thing that you can do in burnout is recognize those shoulds. If you don't recognize them, then you just end up shoulding all over yourself and shoulding on others because you're focusing on all the things you should do and not what is right for you at the time. So I could have talked to people at work about what was going on. Instead, I kept it internalized and created illness. If you look at studies of women with breast cancer, you are 10 times more likely to get it if you are high stressed out. And that's exactly what happened to me. That stress led to a cancer scare and some moments that I had to figure out, what am I doing? How can I change some things in my life? So we led up to this point where I couldn't fix things at home. And at work, I was doing renewable energy when a lot of people didn't seem to care that much about clean energy or what was going on in that area. And so what we were doing is trying to get people to think about the pollution, trying to get them to realize that we had like slurry spills here in Tennessee and Kentucky through TVA that were 10 times the size of the BP Gulf oil spill, 100 times the size of Exxon Valdez, and yet nobody knows about it. And so there I was speaking in front of universities and conferences and kicking off solar projects. But on the inside, people were saying, stop it. The environment is not important. It's stupid. It's political. And 17 years of that, it caused a lot of burnout. It was wearing me down. So I'm going to shift gears now. We've got to a point and all of these things were going on. And I thought, you know what? I'm managing this. I'm a leader. That's what we do. We leaders, we suck it up and we just charge on, right? We can't be vulnerable. We can't take that risk. And so I reached this point where I became totally numb. And I thought to myself, by this time my kids had gone off to college. I had a divorce after 21 years of marriage. And I'm thinking, what do I do about this career? Nobody wants to hear about clean energy. Nobody wants to hear about it. Now they do in 2021, but back then they didn't a few years ago. And so I thought, you know what? I wonder if I could tune into and reconnect with my grandma. I wonder what she would say if she was here. And in her style of loving animals and being outside, I started to see snakes, and snakes were everywhere. They were on walks, they were on hikes, they were in my yard. This one was, waiting at the door for me. And as I came outside, because my friends couldn't believe it, so we started snapping pictures of them with me. It began crawling, off the porch and down. And so this happened for months. And I kept asking, and we're going to talk about tuning in. We're going to talk about how do you understand these pressures in a minute. but I couldn't tune into what message she was trying to send me. And I looked up books and we Googled and we did all of these things to try to figure it out, and it didn't make sense. And I grew so weary and so tired. And I was out riding my bike one day on this rural road here near Nashville, where I've lived the last 15 years. And I'm just like, God, Grandma, somebody, could you just give me a billboard? Just give me a sign, because I'm not getting it. And of course, another big snake came right across the road in front of me, which ticked me off. I got off my bike, waited for him to pass, and now I'm pedaling really hard, sweating, and at the end of my rope. I don't know what to do about my job. I don't know what to do about everything going on in my life. What should I do? And it suddenly hit me, just like a bolt of lightning. I got goosebumps, and shed your skin was just as clear as day. Shed your skin. You see, snakes shed their skin for two reasons. One, they have to let go of the things that are holding them back, because it literally confines them. They can't grow into what they are supposed to be. They can't get any bigger. They can't be who they're supposed to be, reaching their potential. And so shedding it, letting it go, is really important. The second reason, which I had never heard of before until this happened, was snakes get parasites in their skin. And if they don't shed them, it harms them. So go back to the cancer story. If we don't shed our worries, if we don't get rid of our burnout, if we don't let go and shed these shoulds in our life, then it makes us sick. And that could be worries in your life. It could be perfectionism. You know, we don't want to fail. We don't want to admit when we're wrong. We don't want to disappoint other people, especially. We don't want to do those things. And so it becomes parasites. And we allow people who are parasites in our lives sometimes. And it causes us damage. So recognizing that and being able to let go of that is really critical in avoiding burnout. So what I want you to do is just take a second on your sheet. You have a little space there about shedding the shoulds. And these are things that you could recognize, that you get that feeling in your stomach. And this is confidential. This is just for you to have and to recognize, because you can work on shedding these things. It might be that person that when your phone rings, you want to, you just feel sick at your gut, like, oh, I don't want to answer that call right now. It might be the neighbor, the family member that, you know, when they are around, it just sucks the life out of you. They're energy vampires. And so it might be something you're struggling with that you haven't been able to do, and you need to change a direction and let it go. So just think about a few of those things, and I'll give you a minute to jot down a few things that you could let go. So I'm going to keep moving along, as I know we're a little tight on time today, but keep this worksheet and come back to it and add things as you're thinking about them. When something makes you feel off balance, when you're having a moment of burnout, ask yourself the question, what is the should monster in this situation? What is that thing that I am putting pressure on myself? And is it going to benefit me? If not, let it go. So that will help in the future. The first step, assess what your pressures are and let them go. The second step is tuning in, connect. And we all have this innate sense of being able to have intuition. We all are able to tune in, and we do it in different ways. We also have bias in the way that we hear things, and we tend to listen in one way or the other. So I'm going to stop sharing for a minute, and we're going to do an activity together. And what we're going to do, we'll break out as soon as I give you the instructions, and Nina's going to work with you on the team on site there. And for those of us virtually, we're going to work together with Susan in a breakout room. And the activity goes like this. Nina will do it in her room, and then I'll do it in mine. We are going to count to 3, And those of you that are in tables, you're going to be in a specific group. So I need you to identify one listener at each of those tables. Go ahead and do that now. And then online, I need one person to volunteer to be the listener. So what I need you to do is, on the count of 3, then each of you at the same time is going to say what your favorite White Castle item is. So at the count of 3, I'll say 1, 2, 3, and then just say whatever that favorite item is, just say it. And did you say Jason or Mason?
Mason.
Mason, okay.
And are you saying menu item, or that we like to eat, or what do you mean by favorite item?
Your favorite White Castle item, so menu item would be fine. And now you, Mason, you don't say anything. All you do is listen. So you're not going to say anything. You're just going to listen to what everyone else says. Got it?
Okay. All
right, guys. So here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Double cheeseburger.
Perfect. Now, no more discussion. We're going to join the other group. Mason, hold your thoughts. Okay, how's our main room going?
Good.
Did you all already say your favorite item, Nina?
She said they did.
Yes, we did. We are ready to go.
Great. So hopefully no one has discussed it yet. I now want the people at the tables that were the listeners, and we can let Mason, I'm so sorry. We can let Mason go first. And I want to know what you heard whenever you were listening to the people.
I heard a lot of static. Our connection was bad. All I heard was a lot of static, and everybody was talking at the same time that I did hear John Whitaker say double cheeseburger. That I heard clearly, but the rest of it was everybody speaking at the same exact time, and then there was a static in our connection.
Got it. Now, why do you think you heard John say that? Do you know why you just were able to discern that?
I don't know if it's familiarity with John's voice, or usually work together, but he just happened to say it when there wasn't everybody talking at once, and I heard it very clearly.
Perfect. Okay, let's hear from some of the folks in the room.
I heard double cheeseburger and some kind of slider for Anthony.
All right, so how did you discern that? Why do you think you picked up on those two?
They actually started immediately, and Anthony's slider comment finished last, so I was able to pick up.
Okay.
Amy's in turn in the middle, but I could catch the beginning.
Good, good. And what I want you to notice here as we go through this, I wanted to do a couple before I explained so that you could see this is not planted in their minds. When people are getting this barrage of information at the same time, it's really hard to make sense of it. It's hard to tune into one thing. It sounds like static, as Mason said. And so you tend to use this unconscious bias. Now, he was familiar with John's voice. And so you tend to listen to people who are like you or that you like. Maybe it's the person that's the loudest. Maybe it's the person that was first into your office or the last person that you talked to in your office, like the next table just iterated. And so there are many ways that we discern what we are listening to. So with that, let's go ahead and go through the other tables in the room, Nina, and listen to them.
All right, we'll go. Well, I just looked at Chris and said, "Did you say chicken wing?" He said, "No." And he didn't know the other ones either. So well, I got marked because she was like a 5-minute delay.
So
Her original,
So many to choose from.
did you say double cheeseburger?
I said chicken wing.
I said double cheeseburger. See, it was confusing because, yeah, thank you, Barb.
Mine was easy because I had Jeff. So, but it was distracted a little bit from the static from the rest of the room.
Yeah.
So, but he said double cheese. He didn't say double cheeseburger, so I was tuned in. There you go. It was hard with the outfit.
I only had 2 people to listen to, and I only could hear one. So, and they timed themselves very well. And I'm used to Michael. I'm used to Michael's voice. I talk to Michael almost every day. So like immediately, it was just like and then Vanessa had her mask on, and I was like, still, you know, she had repeated to me like later 2 times for me to even understand it still. So, but I do think it is about tuning into the person you're used to or hearing it, and their timing was excellent.
Yes, good. Any more in the room, or is that all of the tables?
I can go. I only heard chip, which was jalapeno slider, right? Did you say that? And it's funny because she's right next to me, but maybe her voice is lower, and it was just like all of a sudden it was like that, and then he said something. So yeah, it's hard.
Mine was very descriptive. It was just Tommy. We didn't pick John as the listener because he wasn't sitting here. And he said double cheeseburger, tops only, no middle bun. And I got all of that because I knew there was going to be a lot of noise, so I read his lips.
Yeah, same thing. It was just Lynn and I, and she said the original slider, and I do remember reading part of her lips to make sure that I got it and looking at it. And it helped that we only had the 2 of us.
We had 2, but they both said it at the exact same time, so I heard jalapeno breakfast.
So I was the listener, and there's 5 of us at this table. And the 4 people I was listening to are people I don't talk to on a regular basis. So it was very hard to discern who was saying what. I heard something about a waffle. I did hear jalapeno, and that was about it.
Cool.
Only had 2 at my table. I think I heard Dave very clearly because he's got a deeper voice and he was closest to my ear. So.
I think that's everyone, Tabitha.
Right. So you can hear, this is one of those live experiments that you can't kind of control what people are going to say, and you hope for the best. But you can hear in each of the responses that whether it's I heard them because they were more familiar to me, I listened to that one because it was unusual, it was different than the others. We listen in a number of different ways. And what I want to do is talk about that, how tuning in is so important and how we can learn to tune in to how people are feeling, to how we are feeling and thinking. And you might say, well, why should we care about that? Well, we should care because our intuition will serve us in meeting the values that White Castle holds up and holds as important. Now, I have a story in the book about the owl and how the owl came to be my spirit animal, quote unquote. I'm very logic driven. You know, I'm more of a math brain than a feeling emotional brain. So to me, feel was like a 4-letter F word for many, many years. And I'm still getting comfortable with, hey, tapping into intuition. How do you feel at this moment? How are you showing up? And I think it's really important to understand how we tune in. In the book, I talk about, I kept asking, you know, what is my spirit animal? I had heard other people that studied energy work that could actually see other people. They had a spirit animal, and I thought that would be really cool, but I didn't know how to do that. What is that? And it's an ancient native tradition to have a spirit animal. So I kept asking Grandma, this was after the snake thing, what is my spirit animal? And I was waiting for like a big tiger, or I just knew it was going to be this amazing, powerful, big cat of some kind because I love them. And night after night, I would ask, and I thought I was listening, but I wasn't tuning in. And I kept getting wakened up at night by this stinking owl on the back porch. And every time I would get into my dreams, and be asking about this, I would be waking up by this owl. And one day we were inside, and a lot of chaos was going on, and the owl starts just making all of this racket out back. And my friend said, I don't know what you're feeding that owl, but it's annoying how protective it is of you. And it wasn't until they said that I put two and two together, that the owl was the answer. Later, I learned that the particular owl that was there is called, it was originally called the tiger owl. So I did get my cat spirit animal after all. But the lesson that I learned from the owl, and when I looked it up and when I studied it, is that owls' heads are literally shaped like a satellite dish for tuning in. Their feathers around their ears, if you look at their feathers and the way they're shaped, they're like a funnel, and they funnel sound into the ear. So while owls are traditionally known for wisdom, that wasn't the message for me. In this case, the message for me was about tuning in. Owls' brains are actually pretty small compared to other birds, so they're not too bright, but they're amazing at tuning in. And so I learned what I did after seeing the snakes. I quit my job. I gave away most of my things. I put my house on the market, and I went and lived in the jungle of Costa Rica for 3 months. No cell phone, no street address, no TV, no radio. And it really, really gave me some good time to listen to my intuition, to get in touch with what the universe was trying to say. And going back to how and why should I care about this? Well, here are some examples about being moment motivated, how you can handle impulse situations. Family inclusive. You can tell by your intuition when is someone feeling out of sync or out of harmony, like we were talking about earlier, because you'll feel it. Results driven. Intuition shows us where to make improvements. And then the continuous crave, where should we spend our time? And purpose is one of the things that you can find by your intuition. So following your intuition is something that leads to a high vibe culture, and purpose leads to a high vibe culture. So I want you to look at your second activity under tuning in and recharge on your worksheet. What energizes you? So there are books that talk about flow. You might remember as a kid, if you were out playing and you completely lost track of time, you forgot to eat. And maybe as an adult, what are those things that you're doing at work or at home that you feel so happy when you're doing them, you lose track of time? And other ways that you can tell when your intuition is speaking is if you get goosebumps. Maybe your favorite team takes the field in the final game of the season, or maybe a singer hits an impossibly high note and you just feel full of joy at that moment. Maybe you're in a worship service, maybe you're hiking, maybe you're cycling, maybe you are going on the front lines and talking to customers, and that really energizes you. But list some of the things that energize you. That feeling of being energized, elated, lit up, those words that we use to describe it, those feelings help us regain and recharge our lives. So it's really, really important to connect to what those things are. And then when you're feeling down, if you're feeling off balance, go back to that list. Put this list where you get ready in the morning, or put it on your refrigerator, put it at your desk. And when you find yourself really frustrated and starting to spiral down or feeling drained, do some of these activities and it will help you recharge. So I'll pause for just a minute and let you guys write down some things. All right, and just for the purpose of time, we started a little bit late, so I'm gonna keep us moving, but do keep this list where you can see the things you need to shed and the things that are helping you connect and recharge as you go. So we're gonna go back, and I'm on the back side now. We're almost finished, but I wanna share something with you, the things that I learned, the lessons from living in the jungle. First of all, there's no way that things should be. So stop shooting on yourself and others. Everyone gets to choose what energizes us and what our own purpose is, and we can follow those things in waypoints. You don't have to be stressed out. You can use your intuition to find little waypoints, and they'll add up to this purposeful transformation over time. A lot of people, my older son says, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know my purpose. And so he just doesn't get into action. And you don't have to know your purpose. Mine changes all the time. But you have to know a general direction of what makes you happy. Like for me, sometimes that's being in nature with animals. Sometimes that's working with teams like yours and doing leadership development and wellness programs. That jazzes me up and is fun. So what's specific to you? And just try to do more of those things until you figure out, that it's towards your overall purpose. Don't stress out if you don't know what that purpose is. Just do more things on your list that make you feel good. Inside, we are all exactly the same. As I said, we're made of the same energy that makes plants, animals, everything in our world. And so we are exactly the same on the inside. We may be born into different ethnographies. We might be of different ethnicities, geographies, different education levels, socioeconomic levels. All of these things are different, and we look different on the outside, but when you look inside, we're exactly the same. And so remember that. Remember that everyone has this same powerful energy, and they can recharge anytime. And you, by being a positive light in the world, quite literally, they might bring you down if you're not careful, if you don't protect your energy, but you can also bring others up and learn how to protect yourself. So being electrical, we have the power to stay positive anytime, anywhere, and at no cost. You don't have to pay people. You don't have to go to the jungle. None of that. You can tap into it at any time. And the growth curve, we talked about this earlier, tying this, since you all are business leaders, I want to tie it back to your business. It's the same for all living things. We all are born, we grow, we gain maturity, and then we have decline. And that's our living life cycle, but it's also the life cycle for our companies overall. And you have to constantly be innovating with new products. You're always out there in the market talking about what's hot with others and serving your customers. And so it's just the same as we have to recharge ourselves, we have to recharge our organizations. And I'm going to leave you with a final story and about animals from the book, and a final story from one of your leaders there at White Castle that demonstrates. So when I went through this process of burnout in my life, at first I learned, oh man, I'm putting way too much pressure on myself. I need to shed the shoulds. Then I figured out, and with practice, I got much better at tuning in and connecting to my own intuition. What was important to me? What was making me feel happy? And I knew without a doubt when I came back from that jungle that I didn't want to go back to work in that same big corporate setting I had spent so much of my career in. I wanted to help companies like the one that I left. I wanted to help them with their own purposeful transformation, with their own leadership programs, with learning how to stay energized and innovative as a company. And that shift for me really makes me feel fulfilled. And the bats were the animal in this story that taught me the next step is taking the risk to actually do it. And so I started consulting. I started working with a small boutique company and doing consulting. And that was a big risk. I hadn't done something like that before, gone out on my own with a few partners. And it was really rewarding to take the risk, but taking that risk is the lesson from bats. I did yoga almost every day on this little torn up towel that I had in front of this big tree. And I'm not very sophisticated with my yoga. I just was trying to do stretches and, I'm inverted upside down and sorting out life. My whole life was upside down at the time. And I was thinking through what's next? How does this affect me? And bats started to come and hang out with me, literally. And 7 of them came day after day. And when I would start practicing yoga, they would come and do their little chirps and clicks. It kind of sounded like a bird with a stuffy nose. I named them after the 7 dwarfs. And what I learned from them was, you see, bats are not like other animals. They're not like other birds, I should say, because birds can take off from the ground. Bats have to risk letting go and falling to their death before they can fly, before they can reach the heights to get their nourishment, before they can grow and thrive. And so I learned, great, Tab, that you now know what you want to do. You got to take the risk to do it. And there's a story that I love from one of the folks on your team about taking risks. And it's a story where this person had been there for maybe 20 years at White Castle. And he was really energized at the thought of moving up, of a promotion. So he talked to the VP and his chain of command about it. And unfortunately, he got some feedback that he wasn't comfortable hearing about. He was showing up maybe to others in a way that wasn't the way he intended. And it felt negative. But instead of reacting in a negative way, what he did was he took the risk of taking action and asking others for direct conversations so that he could improve himself. Now, he could have gotten angry. He could have left the company. He could have confronted people in a negative way, but instead he chose to have these unfiltered conversations. And he literally asked them, I want you to be brutally honest with me. I want you to tell me how you see leadership today. What do you see as leadership challenges? How can I improve as a leader? And he even met with a couple of executive council members. So he was really serious about learning and growing as a person and as a leader. He took a big risk. What are the things that we fear as leaders? We fear looking vulnerable, right? We fear looking stupid. Remember, going back to my story, I feared people are going to judge me if I ask the hard questions. But he did it anyway. And you know what? He wasn't the only one that took the risk, because the people who talked to him, they took a risk to have a really uncomfortable conversation. Nobody likes uncomfortable conversations, but they took a risk too. And the result of this, the result was powerful. Not only was Brian Walkerly promoted to director of real estate, but silos came down, communications improved, and leadership across the organization was strengthened as a result. And so taking that risk was necessary for both Brian and the people that he worked with. If they hadn't taken the risk, then nothing would have changed. So remember your third step. Once you shed your shoulds, once you connect to what makes you happy and where you want to head in the next short term, then take the risk and try it. You can always use the samurai warrior technique of they would do death before battle. And they would imagine that they died in the battle the following day. And they would process that. That's the worst thing that could happen. They show up to battle And then they have no fear because they've already died the night before in their minds. It's the same with your risk. So maybe Brian processed that risk and thought, what's the worst thing that can happen? I hear uncomfortable things that I don't like, you know? That was the worst thing that could happen. And he decided it's worth the risk, it's worth taking. And I thank you, Brian, for letting me use your story today to share with others. I think it's a powerful story of how organizations can take healthy risks, and each of you can talk to your team members about having those uncomfortable conversations with you to talk about their culture and talk about how they can improve. So I want to leave you with that positive note, and I'll save some time if you have a couple of questions. I know, we're keen to close out, that you guys need to get on to lunch, but if you have questions, I'm happy to take a couple of those.
What was it like when you came back from the jungle?
Loud. Really loud. I live downtown in Nashville, and you literally forget all of the noises of the dump trucks and the construction, crews, and all the sounds of the city, the cars. And it was also very different in climate. I was there during the hot, dry season, so it was 100 every day. And then coming back home in the Southeast, it's hot and humid, so different environment, and definitely missed the animals. You'll hear about scorpions in the book, all kinds. Coatimundi, I didn't even know that was a critter, but they're like a raccoon meshed with an anteater, and they live in the trees, and they would come down and visit every day. So there's a lot of interesting animals there. Great. Well,
Thank you so much, Tabitha. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And Nina will have my information. If anybody does have questions, you can shoot me an email. It's been really fun talking with you all today.
All right, thank you.